Hey everyone. Just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Joshua Bernstein. I'm a rising senior at Tufts University, and I'm the founder of a company called TouredIt, which offers personalized college tours. We've partnered very gladly with Solution Prep and Eric to put together these webinar series, which I'm sure I'm seeing some familiar names here that have been on here before. But basically, what TouredIt does is we offer this niche experience where we'll match, your students with current college students of similar interests. So, you want somebody who's pre-med at Rice, you have you we have tour guides there, someone here today. And so that's sort of the gist behind TouredIt. And now we're here to put our powers together to sort of give, more insight into what is college life like for students of particular niches. Today happens to be pre-med. Last month, I'm sure Eric can get you guys the video, or you have access to the video, was big sports schools. We'll have another one next month, which is going to be business related. So feel free to look forward to that one. But I'm excited to have everybody here today. We thank you guys for coming. Everybody you see here is available to give tours at their respective schools. So if you are interested in any of these schools, feel free to reach out to them for tours on our website. And before we begin, I am making sure we are all good. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting things going.
Thanks so much, Josh. I appreciate it. Yes, my name is Eric Ginsberg. I am a master tutor at Solution Prep, where we do important things like college admissions coaching and SAT and ACT prep in Central Jersey, as well as online. And I'm really thrilled to be a part of this. And I want to thank Josh for putting it together. We always have such great TouredIt guides who join us for this and give their student perspectives. I myself have visited hundreds of colleges, and I find there's nothing quite like getting a student's actual perspective, which is why something that I've gotten to do a lot when I go around visiting colleges is, I'll do an official visit, but then I'll also meet with a TouredIt guide to get their, unique perspective that may not be the school's marketing pitch. And I find that's really helpful as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a big conversation tonight. I got a big list of questions that we've curated that we want to talk to today's students about. And then what we also want is for parents and for students who are joining us to also ask their own questions. So there is a chat. And to enter the chat, you have to create a new chat. That way it doesn't go out to everybody. So just open the chat and click the little pencil in the top left corner, and that will let you chat directly to the Q&A. When we get up to the Q&A, our moderator will, our Q&A moderator will put together all of your questions and then pitch them as students for us. And some topics we may get to through the course of the conversation. But by all means, when you think of it, just throw it in the chat. And we will do our absolute best to get to all of them because we do want to answer the questions that are on your mind as well as the questions that we think are going to be really helpful. And with that, I'm going to let our students introduce themselves. Why don't you guys just go left to right from the spreadsheet, and then we'll get going on questions after that.
Hi, my name is Aditya Shah. I'm a sophomore at Johns Hopkins University, and I'm majoring in molecular and cellular biology.
Hi, my name is Andrew Park. I'm a junior at WashU in St. Louis, and I'm a major in PMP, which is a unique major offered at WashU. That's a mix of philosophy, neuroscience, and psychology.
Hi guys, I'm Caitlin. I just graduated in May from Tufts and I majored in biopsychology.
Hi, my name is Priya. I'm a rising senior at Rice University, and I'm a dual degree student getting my Bachelor's of Science in Cell Biology and Genetics and my Bachelor of Arts in Sports Medicine.
Hi, I'm Favor Asbor, a junior at UNC Chapel Hill, majoring in health policy and management.
So, guys, thank you all so much for being here. We have a lot of questions for you, but I think one that I want to always kick off this conversation with, because we are talking with a lot of high school students and their parents who are in the college admissions process, whether they're 12th graders working on applications now, or even 11th, 10th, and 9th graders who are looking ahead to that project. Let me ask you guys, what other colleges or programs also accepted you? And what made you choose, I think most importantly, the college where you are? Why don't we start with Andrew on that?
I was accepted into WashU, obviously, and USC, University of Southern California. And those were my main two options, my top two options when I was deciding between colleges. And it kind of boiled down to a few different factors. Um, I mean, one aspect was the distance. I'm from New Jersey, so California was on the other side of the coast. And I also knew people at WashU. But in terms of a pre-med aspect, the reason why I chose WashU over USC was the abundant opportunities that WashU offered. So I knew someone in the grade above me who was pre-med at WashU, and through that, I was able to learn of the opportunities that they offered. And one thing that really stuck out to me was how abundant research is at WashU and how easy it is to get research opportunities in different labs with different professors. And that's something that I considered important when looking at a college for pre-med. Um, so I'd say that was the main factor alongside just location and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so I was accepted to UNC Honors, UMD, Rutgers, and UVA, I think. And I chose Hopkins because I felt like it had obviously like cutting edge research. And just to be able to like work at research that like is kind of pushing the barriers of science, especially so early on in my undergrad career, I felt like that was vital for me, especially for being pre-med. And I kind of wanted to get an experience as to what being like pre-med would be. And at a school where like there's a lot of pre-meds, like there's so many like communities and collaborations where you can join and you can get like you can learn so much from other people here as well.
Yeah, I think Johns Hopkins is, best known for its medical school. And in fact, one thing I think is interesting about Johns Hopkins is that the student body is about 6,000 and change, as you can see from Adi's overlay, from undergrads, but it's almost 24,000 grad students, which means the ratio of grad to undergrad is a 4-to-1. So it is primarily, almost 80% of the students there are graduate students. And I think that's something a lot of people thinking about pre-med and med, they think, oh, Johns Hopkins, yes, for med school, but there are far fewer undergrads. And so, yeah, I'm interested to hear that you wind up with a lot more really hands-on kind of earlier experiences with that. So thanks so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask you guys, obviously you go to the schools you go to, and I hope you're super jazzed about it, but, how did you react? What was your feeling like when you got that acceptance, and when and how did you decide that this was the college where you would attend? Favor, can we start with you?
Yeah, so for me, UNC Chapel Hill was one of my top choices. Early on after high school, I had known I wanted to go into healthcare consulting, which is something I'm really passionate about. I wanted to do a year of that during my gap year. And so on my timeline, I planned out to spend that year in consulting. So when I got into UNC, I was just over the moon, super happy. I feel like it had taken a lot of stress off my shoulders when the early decisions came back because I was really happy to see I got in. And I feel like overall, throughout the whole process, it was very stressful. So seeing the acceptance really made me kind of ease up a little bit because you kind of feel like you made it in a sense once you get that acceptance when you're opening it up, and it can take a lot of stress off of you.
Yeah, for me, I applied to WashU regular decision, so I found out a little bit later on in my application cycle. So when I was accepted, I was super happy. I mean, up to that point, I wasn't that lucky when it came to my applications. So when I found out I got onto WashU and then USC, I was happy with the options I had. But pretty immediately chose WashU over USC, for some of the reasons that I said before, just the strength of WashU's pre-med program and just different opportunities that I knew existed on campus.
Yeah, so when I got accepted, I was obviously like thrilled, but I was also shocked. It's a kind of funny story, but I woke up from a nap and I saw that the acceptance rates, like I saw the acceptances were out, and I went to check because I didn't think I got in. Both my parents were at work, but I turns out I ended up getting in. But I chose at a 10 after I toured the campus, obviously, and they came out with financial aid and it was affordable. Um, Along with like I think like I toured all the other universities I went to as well, but I think like Hopkins stood out the most to me. I love the campus, and yeah, that was one of the reasons why I chose to come here.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. one thing that a lot of students really get focused on in the college application process is writing their college application essay. And of course, there's the Common App, which, I think most or all of the colleges that we're representing here today do accept the Common App. And would you guys mind sharing it, maybe a bit about your Common App essay? Like, what was your topic? What was your story that may, be interesting or inspiring to other students who may be joining us?
Yeah, so I was really involved in high school, and so I was really having a hard time trying to figure out what I wanted my narrative to be. But kind of a unique aspect of my heritage is that I am biracial, half Indian, and then my dad is white, and I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. But one of the aspects of my heritage that I've had a lot of trouble with growing up is that I don't speak my mother's native tongue. So I've never been able to communicate with my grandmother. So my Common App essay was about not being able to speak the same language as my grandma, but how I've learned to love my heritage and the blend of my cultures anyways, and how me not being able to speak the same language as her doesn't make me feel isolated from her, and how I've taken that experience to learn how to read the other things from people in the world around me that are often go unsaid, and how I plan to use that skill in my future endeavors to make me a more strong applicant and also a good healthcare provider in the future.
That is impressively fresh in your mind.
So for me, for my Common App essay, I went to a small school. I actually went to an early college for high school. And so during my experience, I think I was in about like four or five of the clubs, pre-health clubs, student government, because we didn't have that many clubs at my school. And so we had a lot of students that were pre-health, pre-med. So it was very competitive for clubs and club positions. And so I think I ran for executive positions in about six clubs, and I only got one during my time of senior year. And so I talked about how sort of like impactful that can be when you face rejection a lot, because I've prior to that one I won, which was senior class president, I've gotten rejected from about like five other clubs or exec. And so I wrote my Common App essay about how I overcame those struggles. I overcame not being picked for something, because it happens. No matter where you are in your journey, you're going to face rejection. So I talked about overcoming that rejection and using it to, and I used that story to talk about how I didn't let one rejection be like my final rejection, if that makes sense. I used that one rejection to keep on going, keep pushing forward, build new motivation, and eventually I did win a position. I did go on an executive board for a club I really cared about, which is student government. And so that's kind of how I based my Common App essay, because I kind of wanted them to see, because like I feel like I wanted them to see my growth and see how it impacted me more so than me just listing all my activities. I want them to really hear about that story and that side.
Thank you.
So I wrote my Common App about chess. It's something I've like had a passion for ever since like I was five, I think. And I basically talked about this one tournament I played when I was like very young. And it was this tournament where it was like I was playing against one person for three games in a row. In the first game, I was winning and then I just lost. And my second game, I won. And then my third game, it was a draw. So I talked about how like it was perseverance and how sometimes even though like in life, like that a draw will happen inevitably and like you can't control everything that happens to you. Like as much as you try to do, like you can't control everything. And it also like I kind of discussed like perseverance and focus and like having a good mentality as you try to, work through your problems.
Sure. And, perseverance is an important part of any story. One thing we talk with students about a lot is, you don't want to just write about the worst thing that ever happened to you, but that you want to show, as Favor mentioned, growth, and as Adi mentioned, overcoming something that was difficult, because that's the kind of student who will succeed at college. A lot of your colleges also have their own school-specific essays. Some of them one, some of them five, and sometimes more. So I was curious if you guys remember any of the school-specific essays from your college, and how did you approach those, or what did you write about? Andrew, can I start that one with you?
Yeah, so WashU is actually fairly simple. There's only one essay, and it was just kind of a run-of-the-mill, like, why do you want to come to WashU and what do you want to study? And the way I approached that essay was I looked at WashU's values online and like based or and asked people who I knew there what they thought was a good way to describe the student body at WashU. And I kind of took that idea and ran with it in my essay. So the approach I took was um, talking about how, like, my love for learning and how I'm always very eager and curious to find and discover new things, whether that be in research or like in and out of the classroom in different ways. So my essay really focused on um, like kind of a mix of like what I've said, what I want to do in and out of the classroom and how that relates to me and what I did in high school. And besides and outside of the essay, there was also an optional video that WashU lets you send. And that video I felt was kind of necessary for myself because for me, I kind of wanted a way to express my creative output and like really express who I am to the admissions officers outside of just like a 300 word essay. And how I approached that video that I made was just going like a video of me going through my hobbies, what I love doing, different clips that I had of me doing those certain activities, just to really show that I had something going on outside of just academics.
That's a really interesting topic. I'm actually glad you brought that up. If I can detour and talk about that for a moment, because we are seeing a growing number of colleges, though still a minority, that do give students that opportunity to have some kind of video part. And I feel like, and you touched down on it, you edited things together. You brought in footage of this and footage of that. And a lot of students maybe aren't as technologically capable to edit those things together in a video and sometimes feel like they're at a disadvantage when I think that to your earlier point where you needed them to know about who you were and to know about your creative output. I feel like students shouldn't feel the pressure that they have to make a video just because one is available, that there's a certain kind of student who really does come alive on camera and in person, who that can be a positive. And I think about it a little bit like the way colleges describe test optional policies, which is when you send it, it can help or hurt your application, but if you don't send it, we're not going to hold it against you. And so, students should, keep that in mind, not feel the pressure to be camera ready if you're not, to not have to like edit videos if that's not a skill that you have. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about that. And then anybody else want to talk about their school specific essays?
So Rice definitely has a few. I remember one being a Why Rice essay, which I kind of took the same approach as Andrew. I just looked at Rice's core values. And then I also had the opportunity to tour Rice before I applied. So I threw together some of my favorite spots on campus into that essay as well to make it feel a little bit more personal, and show that this was somewhere where I could really envision myself. And then there was another essay about how you envisioned bringing diversity to the university and contributing to the diverse culture that does embody Rice. And so I kind of talked about my heritage again, similar to my Common App essay, but went a little bit more in depth about how me being biracial has made me really appreciate other cultures and how growing up in a small town, I would really appreciate the opportunity to learn about cultures different from my own. And then another essay was about an extracurricular activity or something different that you were kind of proud of doing. And so I have a TikTok account where at the time I was posting different videos, but now I post pre-med videos. And so I talked a little bit about my creative journey on TikTok and how I kind of found that creative outlet in the midst of COVID. And then kind of the most unique aspect of the Rice undergraduate application is the Rice box, which is a picture submission that's required for all applicants, and you just submit a picture. There's no background to the picture, there's no anecdote to the picture, you just submit any kind of picture. And so people will submit, creative maps that they've drawn with like all the countries they've visited in the world or pictures of their favorite donut shop from their hometown. And so I submitted a picture of me and my family snowshoeing in Canada, where my mom is originally from. And I guess just going about all the essays and what I've realized since I've come to Rice is that authenticity really does shine through. And, if you're trying to give colleges what you think they want versus who you really are, at the core of yourself, that's going to be apparent to admissions counselors who are reading so many of these essays. So I think I just tried to approach all of my college applications with the mindset that if I put forth who I am as a person and they reject me, then at least I know there's nothing else I could have done because I was 100% myself, rather than trying to be someone that I wasn't. So that's kind of how I approached all of those essays.
These are all outstanding points, and I'm so glad that you're sharing them. And let me ask one more question about the application process. Then we'll move on and talk more about like your experience as students there. One thing that we hear a lot about, a lot of students are looking at BSMD or BSDO programs. Often called a 7-year med program where you apply in high school and you're accepted not just for your undergraduate studies, but also for your medical studies. Some students see it as a great way to just get their hands dirty immediately and start doing the thing they love. Others see it as maybe like a fast track so they can, skip some harder things ahead like MCATs or med school applications, to which I typically caution that if you think this is the easy way out, I assure you this is the hardest application in college. And so I wanted to know, you guys are all, we're here talking about pre-med tracks and pre-med majors. Have any of you guys applied to a BSMD or a BSDO program? If so, how is that different from the regular applications you also submitted? Are you in a BSMD or a BSDO program? And maybe, by your observation, how is that different from some of your classmates who are in a more traditional pre-med track?
So I applied to BSMD programs when I was applying to college. I'm not currently in one, but when I applied to two. I applied to Brown and University of Rochester. And I'd say um those applications were different from standard undergraduate applications, just in the sense where there are more essays, obviously, that come with it. And these essays they kind of dig into you in the sense where you need, here, let me try to think. You kind of need a background in medicine in order to apply to BSMD programs. And that's the kind of sense I got when applying, because like Eric said, these applications are super competitive. Because it's not just an application to the undergraduate university, it's also an application to their medical school. So these applications are different in the sense where you need a background in medicine and you really need to know that medicine is what you want to do this early on in your life. Because if it's not, then um, the admissions officers, I mean, in some way will probably be able to find that out and be able to tell that, um, I don't know, maybe you're not the right fit for that program or whatnot. But although I'm not in a program right now, I could kind of speak to how it differs from regular pre-med. Eric already touched on it. Um, I mean, for some programs, you don't have to take the MCAT, which is a huge bonus. Some schools let you have a lower cutoff for the MCAT. You need to reach only a certain threshold in order to, pass, or you need only to maintain a certain GPA throughout college, which kind of takes off stress when taking like difficult classes. So I guess from my perspective, I kind of saw it as a fast track, which um pros and cons. But I mean, I feel like if you know for sure that medicine is what you want to do, by all means go for it. I think one thing that I do regret is not applying to enough and only applying to two. I think my mindset when applying was kind of that I always envision myself going to like a prestigious university that like as superficial as it may sound, like that was always kind of a dream of mine. And not that many top colleges have BSMD programs. So I wasn't sure how willing I was to like sacrifice, name value with like the program if I were to get in. But if I were to go back in time, I would say that's the dumbest thing that I could have done. I mean, no guarantee I would have gotten in, but I think it's totally worth the extra effort, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat as Andrew. I applied to two BSMD programs. I applied to the Rice Baylor BSMD program, which has actually been discontinued since I applied, so that is no longer a program offered at Rice. And then I also applied also to the Brown BSMD program. Kind of like what Andrew said, it was just additional essays. And I also, I got the same sense that a lot of the essays were really trying to dig into why medicine was your calling. And I hadn't had very many hands-on medical experiences. And I knew that medicine is what I wanted to do, but I didn't really have the extracurriculars to back that up. And so I think that I agree that I wish I had applied to more. But at the same time, I was a little confused at how the process worked, being like a first generation pre-med student, and both of my parents didn't go to college. So it was a little bit confusing overall. And so I think that if BSMD is something you're considering, definitely make sure you do your research and you cast kind of that wide net, because it can be a leg up. But again, you have to consider if medicine is really what you're sure you want to do at such a young age. You also have to consider if the location that you're going to be in is somewhere that you'll be happy living for the next, 7 to 8 years. Is that place happy for you in terms of the city, or is it suburban? Is it like rural? Is your family close by? What's the weather like? Like there's so many things to consider if you're going to be living somewhere really long term, that often get overlooked. And then I would also just encourage you that if you don't get into a BSMD program or a BSDO program that you really want to look at early admissions programs for different medical schools, because that wasn't something that I knew was a thing where you could get accepted to a medical school as a sophomore in college and, have a lot of those same fast track aspects of a BSMD program. So I would encourage you to look into those opportunities as well, because that was something I didn't really know about. And I wish I had when I was a freshman and sophomore in college, as kind of an alternative to the BSMD programs.
I think those are all really great points. Thank you guys so much for sharing those perspectives. And I think that, Priya, to your point, sometimes the medical school that is part of that BSMD program may not even be the same school as the undergraduate institution. It may be some partner school they have, which may be like the school next door, or it could even be a school in a different part of the country. And I think it's just like it's important to consider, would you be happy there for 7 or 8 years? Also, if you're going to go to a med school somewhere else, don't just say yes because you got a BSMD acceptance. Also, go visit where that med school is going to be and see if that separate place is somewhere where you'd be happy living. And to both of your points, where you guys talked about some of those essay requirements that they presume that you already have those medical experiences. So instead of asking like, "What's a medical experience you've had?" they're like, "Tell us about your shadowing." And it's like, "Oh, okay, so you expect that I've done shadowing," or presumptuous questions along those lines. And I think that's something that's really important for people who are considering that path to understand. So thank you guys so much for that. If we can talk a little bit about, what your experiences in your programs have been like. And I can tell from your graduating years, some of you guys are, sophomores, just finished up your first year, entering your second year. Some of you guys just wrapped up your senior year and are now beginning that next stage process. But for your undergraduate studies, can you tell us at your college, what's your experience been like with your professors, with your TAs, with your advisors, with your mentors? Caitlin, I'd love to put the spotlight on you.
Yeah, so I feel like in high school, when you're getting ready to leave, a big thing that they tell you is, okay, you're on your own now. Like nobody's gonna track you down and tell you to finish your assignments, and they're not gonna be there for you as much as we're here for you right now in high school. And well, that's true. Nobody's there to like make sure you do your homework on time. I do think that professors and TAs and everybody, they do really want to help you. And it's very obvious. I think it's easy to get lost, especially in pre-med classes, all like the STEM prerequisites. It's a lot of big lectures. So it's easy to think, okay, there's no way I'm connecting with this professor. There's 200 people in this class. But I think the biggest thing that I did is going to office hours, even if you feel like you didn't really need the help, just going to office hours to connect with the professor on a deeper level is something that I really recommend. And it's so obvious that they want to help you. Even if you think it's a stupid question, they don't at all. And they enjoy helping people and teaching. And I think the biggest thing is I just finished up really like applying and submitting all my secondaries for medical school. And obviously, you need to have letters of recommendation from science teachers. And I feel like going to office hours with those big lecture classes with those teachers and spending more time with them definitely helped me feel more comfortable asking them for letters of recommendation because I wasn't just one person in a 200-person lecture hall. The teachers knew me, I knew them, and I felt comfortable asking them for letters of recommendation. So I think that was a big part of what I did throughout my 4 years. And then I think for advisors, mentors, Tufts, I can't speak for the other schools, but I would assume it's kind of the same thing, has like a pre-health advising committee, and they set you up with a letter packet. They can do mock interviews with you. They have a bunch of webinars and stuff, at least for Tufts, but I'm sure it's the same way for the other schools. And it's so clear that they want to help you. You can set up meetings with them. You can do pre-reads with them. They can help you find out schools that might be a best fit for you. And I just think the biggest thing was like the letter packet, and they submit all of that for you and they send it personally to the schools for you. So you don't have to send one by one all of your letters. And it's basically just like they're enforcing your candidacy for medical school, which I think is a big thing if your school has it to take advantage of it. But that's really the gist. I think it's just to take advantage of the opportunities and ways to get help at your school is the best way to go about it because there are probably a lot more opportunities than you think, and everybody's ready to help.
So I would say at UNC, I would freshman year, I think for me when I first came in, one thing that I wasn't really sure how to navigate was what to do in these like 300-person lecture halls, how to bond with the professor. And I think the way that I kind of bridged that gap was I went to office hours like during week one. We literally had like only the syllabus assignments. We didn't have actual assignments yet. But I went to office hours. I found an office hour session that worked for me. So I would go to the same office hour session. I put it in my schedule, and I got to get really close to one of the professors that way. Um, and that same professor, I also sat in like the third row of his class, right? And it's like a 300-person lecture, but I'd always raise my hand, even if I'm wrong sometimes, and I'd always volunteer. And I feel like professors do notice you a lot. And that's how I got really close to one of my faculty advisors. I'm currently a peer mentor for him in his class. And the way I got that relationship, the way I got to that level was I was active in his class. I went to his office hours. I always, if I had some question about something, I'd also wouldn't just go to office hours without anything. I would go to class, pay attention, write down notes. And then if I had questions about stuff and I couldn't find the answer to it, I'd ask that at office hours rather than just asking random questions. I feel like at UNC, personally, from my experience, there's a lot of resources, but you have to go out of your way to make the most of them. But when you do go out of your way, it makes everything so much easier. Same thing with like advisors and mentors. My advisor, I try to meet with my advisor at least like once a month, even if I don't have an update or anything significant, just so that it kind of helps you ground yourself almost, I feel like. So I meet with my advisor about once a month. We go over everything that's happening, everything new. So I kind of sort of like, it helps you. I feel like advisors help you realign yourself to that path you're kind of going towards and to make sure you're on track. So I feel like that's really helpful. And then with mentors, I think peer mentors are one of the best ways to know what you're getting into with classes. They've experienced it. They're on the same track. I'll always say, talk to peers, talk to TAs. They are so helpful because they've been where you are. And that's one of the biggest advice that I could give for succeeding as a pre-med student. Talk to your TAs, talk to your peer mentors because they will give you they'll give you the perspective of a student. So I feel like it's the most helpful.
Yeah, I feel like my experience with professors has also been great. Like at first, like obviously when you walk into like a class your freshman year, it's kind of intimidating seeing like 350 other faces there and the professor, obviously. But I think like if you make the effort to go to office hours and you make the effort to kind of like maybe like because at Hopkins we can also schedule like one-on-one office hours with some professors, especially for the bigger classes. And that's something that I used last year for one of my classes, and I think it was great. It helped me get ahead of the class and understand what was happening. But I think something that's also valuable at Hopkins is the TA office hours. I'm pretty sure other schools have this too, but like the TA office hours were like very helpful for me because you can build a connection with someone who's older than you, but like also going to the same university, and they've experienced everything you've experienced with the same professor. So they can give you insights on how the professor teaches, which is like important because like teaching styles vary from professor to professor. And kind of learning how a professor teaches a class is probably one of the best ways that you can just kind of study for it so you can understand like what's going to be on the exams and etc. And as for advisors and mentors, so when like the year I got to Hopkins like last year, they added a lot of new general education requirements to graduate, and no one was really sure how to navigate through them. But I felt like I like reached out to my advisor and they were able to help a lot.
Thank you. Guys, this is terrific feedback, and I'm glad to hear there's so much support. And to Caitlin's point earlier, I do feel like that's a thing that students are told that when they get to college, they're going to be on their own. But yeah, there is a lot of help, and colleges want to help you succeed. That said, despite all this good news, let's talk about maybe what's been like the most difficult aspect of being a pre-med student so far, and how you've learned to manage or overcome that challenge. Priya, why don't we start with you on that one?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of things that I didn't expect to be so difficult with being pre-med. I think there are two big ones, and the first one was how much harder college has been for me compared to my high school experience. I think I really coasted by in high school. It wasn't hard for me to get really good grades. I was involved in a lot of things, and I still, felt pretty on top of all my work all the time. And college was really a wake-up call for me, especially coming from, a maybe not so great high school and then going to a prestigious university. It was really difficult for me to find my footing. And so, time management skills and dropping classes when I needed to and not having a 4.0, those were all like really difficult things for me to overcome, but have definitely made me a better student in the long run. Um, I think besides that, one difficult thing has been kind of like all the unspoken rules about being a pre-med and applying to medical school that you might not know if you don't have, someone who's in medicine in your family or some kind of mentor guiding you through all the steps. For example, like when to take the MCAT, how to MCAT study, how secondaries work, how primaries work, like how you're supposed to have your secondaries in within 2 weeks of them sending you your secondary invitation. There's just a lot of like small things like that in terms of, how many research hours, shadowing hours, what counts as clinical work, what doesn't, that I really didn't understand and anticipate until I was in the middle of a problem and I had to figure those things out for myself. And so I think just, taking everything in stride and reminding myself that if my path doesn't look identical to someone else's path, that's okay. And being able to ask those questions, reach out to people and not feel, like I'm behind for not knowing everything has kind of been something I've had to constantly remind myself. And so those are just probably two of the bigger things.
And just because you mentioned it for the folks who are tuning in, what is a primary? What is a secondary? Just to clarify.
Yeah, so your primary application for medical school is kind of like your Common App application for undergraduate schools. And then some medical schools will send you secondaries automatically, some screen you, but your secondary application is kind of like a more school-specific application for each medical school that you've applied to who wants to learn more about your candidacy before offering you an interview slot.
Bouncing this one over to Andrew. What's been maybe the most difficult aspect of being a pre-med student so far, and uh, how have you learned to manage or overcome that?
Um, I'd say kind of taking a different approach to Priya. Something that I guess can be a little bit overlooked is your social life. Um, so I mean, I feel like obviously everyone there's like the expectation that you need to put in a lot of time being pre-med into your classes and things outside of the classroom. But I think something that really needs to be drilled in and like something that I had to learn for myself is like, while my friends might be hanging out, I can't always be there. Like if they're going out or, watching a movie somewhere or like doing something, going to dinner, it might suck not to be able to go to all those things. But that's kind of the reality of being a pre-med student. Obviously, it's important to have a good work-life balance, and I'm not saying you can't have fun, but I think something that I kind of underestimated when coming into college was just being able to say no to certain things and just balance my schedule better, time management, all like that kind of stuff.
I kind of agree with both points, definitely. I think, like, similar to Priya, neither of my parents or no one in my family is involved in the medical field. So just going in also from like just a small public high school to a prestigious university, it's very easy to compare yourself to literally everybody around you. And I think just over the 4 years and even now, I still struggle with it, but um I think the most important thing is to just not compare your journey to anyone else. There's no point. You'll literally drive yourself crazy. What's the saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. I think it goes, and it's so true. Like, stay off the pre-med Reddit, like that everybody goes on. It's pointless. Like the people who post on there, you can't compare yourself. But it's again so much easier said than done. And I think it's taken me up until now, honestly, over 4 years to really just get that through my head, I think. And I know it's a big thing that a lot of pre-med students struggle with because you're surrounded by high achievers, you're a high achiever yourself, and it's really easy to get caught up in, oh my God, like look at this person's LinkedIn, they have this experience, I don't have that. And it's like, okay, well, what do I have that they don't have? Like stuff like that, it's very toxic and it wears down on you mentally. And I think again, so much easier said than done, but I think that would be my biggest piece of advice is to just stay focused on your own path, and you've gotten through all the hard days you thought you would never get through before. You can do the next one. So I just think stuff like that kept me grounded and still does because I'm still going through the admission cycle. Just obviously finished up secondaries and stuff like that. And people are getting interview invites and stuff like that. And again, it's easy to compare yourself. And you're not going to win. You're never going to win. Even like someone's always going to be doing better than you. There's no point in all of that. And then also another big thing is kind of what Andrew was saying. I played basketball at Tufts, so it's the same thing as like pretty much any other extracurricular activity. A lot of your time goes into playing a sport or whatever it is you choose to do. So I think similar to Andrew, just being aware of when you're not going to be able to swing something and knowing when to say no, but also I think knowing when to say yes, because a big thing that I've learned is I didn't really pull a lot of all-nighters. I didn't let my mental health or my social life suffer that much because I would again go crazy. Like you can't let your favorite things in your life take a back seat all the time. It's not going to work. So I feel like that's another piece of advice that I would give to pre-med students is just you can do both. You can have a social life, you can have fun in college. You don't need to devote all of your time to studying and experiences and stuff like that. So I just feel like just remembering that you're still in college, you're allowed to have fun, and you're obviously at these prestigious universities. You've done the work to get here. You're going to continue to do the work to do well. So I think just remembering to be proud of yourself and letting yourself have fun is a big piece of advice too.
Yeah, one thing I always tell students is that, uh, one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest uh, changes from high school to college is just being in charge of your own time management. Most people think it's going to be classes are harder, which is true, but it's also, to go back to something we said earlier, like you don't have your parents saying, okay, now it's time for this, okay, now it's time for that. Like you had at home. And as much as we get more and more independent throughout high school, college it's a very big jump. It's not like the next like little step like you're used to maybe previously. So I know a lot of students I work with, they seem in like 11th and 12th grade, they've got their specialty figured out. Like they know exactly what kind of molecular biology or like neurosurgery or cardiology, exactly what they're going to do. And maybe you guys entered this track equally convinced of that, or maybe more open. But have your interests in medicine, like specialties, types of care, changed or evolved since starting your pre-med experience? And you know, how do you feel that also bodes for your time through med school?
Yeah, so when I first came to Hopkins, like I was open to anything, and like I'm also like still very on in my pre-med journey. Like I'm still obviously a sophomore, But like the research I've done and kind of the shadowing I've done, it's kind of led me to lean towards like cardiology or just internal medicine in general. I kind of like I shadowed like a cardiologist over summer, and it was very interesting to learn because he was a heart failure cardiologist. So he was very specialized, and being able to see like the kind of care he had for his patients was something very interesting for me. But at the same time, I'm not like fully devoted to cardiology. Like I think it's important to keep an open mind to everything until you get to actually experience the field and kind of see how you would fit in it.
Yeah, kind of pivoting off that. When I first went to biology, this is the field that I want to do. And I thought I was dead set on that, right? But as I like kind of went through, I learned more about the field. I did shadowing, I did research. I started interested in medicine, yes, but I also started to realize that there's more to the healthcare field as a whole. And I started to view healthcare in sort of a different like light almost. And so I feel like I've definitely gotten a more open perspective. And I think where I am right now, I can't say what specialty I want to do, but I definitely know I want to do medicine. And I feel like shadowing and volunteering research has just strengthened that desire for me.
Yeah, I mean, kind of backpacking on both of them. I think it's important to keep an open mind. When I was still in high school, I played soccer. I was pretty big on sports. So kind of like typically I was like, oh, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon just because that seemed cool and, everything. But the past 2, 3 years, I've had the opportunity to shadow some different doctors. One being uh, transplant surgeons for livers and kidneys. And that was something that really changed my perspective where I was like, whoa, like there are really like other things out there. I really need to put my feet in more doors and, explore more paths and different specialties because I mean, even though, like I still have more time, there's no reason for me to decide this now, but I think it's good to gain that exposure, um, and just kind of explore different things. But yeah, I mean, I'd say my interests have shifted a little bit in the sense where now I'm more open to different fields and yeah.
These are great perspectives, guys. Thank you so much for sharing them. I feel like there's an expectation when you're in high school of what like being a pre-med student is going to be. How did you imagine being a pre-med experience versus the reality you've come to know?
Yeah, so my experience is a little different. I didn't come into Tufts thinking I was going to be pre-med. I always wanted to do something in healthcare, but I didn't really necessarily know what that was. I had it in my head that like becoming a doctor or a dentist like was just something that was too hard for me because nobody in my family was a doctor. I was like, whoa, that's something so far out of my reach that I hadn't even thought about it. But then I also had it in my head about like the toxic pre-med community. I'm not going to be able to balance this, especially not with like full-time sports. But then I think when I got to Tufts and I just saw the environment of just how different it was from what I went in imagining it to be, and just like getting immersed and meeting people who are balancing sports and being pre-med and who are just like me. And I saw myself in like my older teammates who were like, when I was a freshman, they were seniors and they were doing it. And I was like, oh, like, okay, this might not be as difficult or as out of reach as I once thought. So I think for me, it wasn't honestly until, I mean, I was taking like STEM classes because I knew I wanted to do something like in the medical field. But for me, it wasn't really until like the end of sophomore year that I was like, okay, like I'm going to apply to medical school. I'm going to be a doctor. So that's different than I think a lot of pre-meds. And I think it was just because of the like preconceived notion that I had in my head that being a doctor was just unmanageable. There's no way I could do that. Like that's reserved for blah, 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 so and so. And I just feel like that mindset gets you nowhere. Like you can really just do anything that you put your mind to. And now that I've finished it, I've graduated, I'm on the other side of it. And I think of myself as a freshman and I'm just like, it's crazy to see how far that you can go if you're confident in yourself and you keep going. And as everybody on here, I'm sure is doing, and can attest and say the same. I think the reality is just nowhere near what you think of it is, especially in high school. Like it seems something huge, but as you go through it, you realize that you've done it all. You can continue to keep going, and it's just having that confidence and motivation to continue that will take you the farthest, I think.
Yeah, I have known since I was in middle school that I wanted to be a doctor. But like Caitlin, I have like no one in the healthcare field at all in my entire family, my extended family. And so I guess when I came into college, I thought that, since I had gotten like a 4.0 and graduated valedictorian in high school and all these things, that I really had this idea in my head that college was going to be the same. And I remember like telling like my family before I went to college, like, yeah, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna have that 4.0, like I'm gonna graduate with that 4.0, whatever it takes. And I feel like the reality kind of slapped me in the face. And it was like a difficult thing to overcome, but I think that failure has always been something I've struggled with, as a lot of other high achievers probably have struggled with here. So learning to take that failure in stride, I think has been more important to me than any kind of perfect grade could have ever been. Um, I think additionally, as a senior now, when I was coming into college and even as a freshman in college, I really thought at this point in my life, I'd feel older and I feel like I would have more things figured out in terms of being pre-med. And like I thought I would know exactly what I'm doing with the application process. I thought I'd feel more confident, my MCAT would be perfect. And that's just not the case. I still kind of feel like a lot of the days I'm just trying to keep myself afloat in this kind of crazy cycle that is trying to become a doctor. And so I think, learning to take those things in stride and not letting the unknown stress me out as much has been a big thing, because a lot of being undergrad and pre-med is just embracing the unknown. And so just trying to remind myself that even, in med school and as a resident, I'm not always going to have everything figured out, and it's okay to ask for that help and to be a little unsure, has kind of been the way to get through those things.
Thank you. So, these are all phenomenal perspectives. And, we are talking today with high school students who are considering, following in your footsteps and going the pre-med route to someday become medical professionals, and as well as their parents. What advice would you give to a prospective student about getting admitted to your college or maybe to your program? And obviously, you're not in the admissions office making these decisions, and your application, whatever it was about it that worked, certainly it worked. But from speaking with students, from going through this process, um, what advice would you like to pass along to those students?
I'd say one thing that really stands out to me, or one major piece of advice that I have for prospective students that might want to apply to WashU, is that if you know that you really want to go to WashU, because you toured, you like the campus, you like the curriculum, everything, I would say you should definitely apply early decision, because I know that, early decision is like known to be higher at like most schools than regular decision, but WashU is like significantly higher, where I'm pretty sure people who apply early decision, there's like a 35, almost 40% acceptance rate, which is very high. And I think WashU really values people who are committed to coming here. Which is why, I mean, I wasn't sure if I wasn't committed to coming here when I was applying my cycle, which is why I applied regular decision and got lucky. But I know plenty of people who have gotten in through early decision, and if you really know that you want to come here, I would say apply early decision, or even early decision two.
And for those people listening, can you just take a moment to explain to them what early decision is, what
Yeah.
early decision two is?
So early decision, you apply. I don't know when you apply, but you apply early on, or maybe do you know if it's the same time as a
It's
regular
it's it's typically a
application?
little earlier. Typically,
Or
no, for
early?
most colleges, November 1st, give or take half a month.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so you apply a little earlier on, and then like because of that, you hear back early on too, around like December 14th, December 15th. And early decision basically means that if you get in, you have to go there. It's a binding contract. where you apply because you know you want to go there. You shouldn't apply early decision to a school that you're iffy about because if you happen to get in, you have to go there because it's a binding contract. So pros and cons to it. If you find a school you really like, you should apply, but if not, you could hold back.
So I would say, yeah, agree. Don't apply if you're applying early decision, do it to your number one school, the school that you really truly want to go to the most, because you can only early decision to one school, but you can still apply early to your like you still there's early action applications, so you can still do those. And for UNC specifically, I would advise that because I'm pretty sure the way they operate, most scholarships are given out to students who apply early because the way the scholarships work for a lot of scholarships in different programs, they have a limited number of seats. Once those seats are gone, given away to prospective students, they're not going to keep giving out. There's no extra seats. So they might save some seats for regular admission and some for early admission. But I feel the highest chance you have of getting a scholarship or an additional program or something like into the honors program, for example, is if you apply early. So I would keep that in mind because those programs give you a lot of opportunities. And so I think that's really important. And then also, I would say for UNC, knowing the major you want to do, UNC has a lot of different majors you can do for pre med. And I think we're one of the few schools where we have certain programs that you have to apply into, like majors. And so, like my major, which is a public health major, you have to apply to that major after you get into the school. And so, my advice would be if this is one of the schools you're considering, start very early on about thinking if what major you want to do at UNC so that way you can start building towards getting into that major, seeing what if it's what you really want to do and how it will benefit you on your pre-med journey.
And just before we get on to somebody else, because Andrew brought up an interesting stat, I dug through the numbers about who gets into WashU early decision, and you can see when Andrew's talking or if you guys switch to gallery view, you can see on Andrew's overlay what the acceptance rate is for WashU. I don't have it in front of me right now because it's covered by his name. I have him up top. But the early decision acceptance rate is about 25%, the early decision, which is binding. But a full 66% of last year's freshman class were admitted in the early decision pool. So only a third of the students who are there applied regular as opposed to early decision. So not only is it a significantly higher acceptance rate by magnitudes of maybe four or more times, it's also like Favor was saying, once they fill the seats that they want for early decision, what's left is what's left. And at WashU, only a third of seats were left last year for those regular decision students who did not apply early decision. So that's, certainly you can only apply to one early decision, and you shouldn't do it lightly because, as Andrew mentioned, it is binding. But if you're sure, I mean, it can definitely increase your chance of getting in. I'm sorry, I wanted to derail and just point out that stat because it was so big at 66%. But just continuing, I know we had one more of you had thoughts on the question we were on, which is what advice would you give to applying students at this juncture? I'm trying to reload my stuff. Priya, what did you have to say about that?
Yeah, so I think that that's really good advice from both Andrew and Favor. Um, I think that I didn't apply anywhere ED because I had heard that sometimes financial aid could be less if you applied ED to schools because that was the binding contract. They feel less obligated to give you financial aid. But I'd wish I had looked more into financial aid programs at different schools because Rice, for example, does not operate on that kind of financial aid. Rice financial aid is entirely based on your family's annual income. And if you fall within a certain income bracket, that's the aid you get, no questions asked. And so I think that looking into those different things that may prevent you from applying ED is important, but also, don't hear this and think that if you don't apply early or you decide to apply somewhere late that, there's no hope for you because that's also not the case. I did get into Rice regular decision, and it was not one of my top choice schools. So, things work out the way they're meant to work out. You just have to kind of trust the process and put your best foot forward, but I wouldn't get too caught up in the nitty gritty if that's something that, you're kind of freaking out about, even though it is a great opportunity. Um, I think that, I work in the Office of Admissions, and so I work pretty closely with a lot of admissions officers. And I think honestly, the biggest thing for me when I was applying to college, and the biggest thing to say to you guys, is not to get caught up in what other students have done to get into schools, because that's already been done. And you don't have to be some like extraordinary story to get into these great schools. You just need to be authentic. And if you put your authentic self forward and you don't get into somewhere, then you just know that you weren't a good fit for that school. I think the admissions counselors really know what they're doing when they admit students, and they admit students who are going to make the college campuses a more vibrant place. And so if you won't fit in with that cohort of students, that's not something negative against you. It's just that you're a better fit for somewhere else. So I think as long as you're being authentic, you're not trying to, be someone you're not trying to like compare your activities to other people's and think that, oh, this person got in with this, so I need to do that. You'll end up somewhere that not only you deserve to be, but somewhere that you're meant to be and that you're really gonna thrive at.
Thank you. That's, let's keep the kind of positivity going. Let's shift gears and talk about maybe like what's been your favorite class or professor or project of your educational experience so far? Why has that been your favorite? Adi, maybe you want to kick that one off.
Yeah, so my favorite class, I took it for my first semester of college, and it was intro to psychology. There's topic Professor Firestone, and he was just coming back from paternity leave, I believe. So it was very interesting to me because like first off, I feel like I've always been interested in psychology, but I think the way he taught the class was very interesting. He was very enthusiastic throughout the whole class, and it was a class of 450 students, but it never felt like it was a class of 450 students. Like his teaching style felt like very like he was kind of like personalizing it in a way. He was like it felt like you were receiving his content. Um, and obviously like his like TA hours are very accessible, and I thought his exams were very fair, which is like something that's obviously very important for a class. And I thought like the way he just explained the concepts was great too.
For me, since Tufts is a liberal arts school, we actually had to, at least in the arts and sciences school, we had to take a lot of classes that I probably would not have taken if I didn't go to Tufts. I had to take a lot of humanities, arts, stuff like that I definitely wouldn't have taken, especially as a pre-med. I wouldn't have thought of it. Um, so I think a lot of my favorite classes were ones like that where I would not have taken. I took ethics, like dance classes that I really enjoyed. I took a lot of music classes, like world music, music of North Africa. Um, let's see, I'm looking at my transcript right now. Training for half marathon, stuff like that. Just a lot of stuff that I didn't even know like were offered. I took a class called Dinosaurs, Living Life with a Purpose. So I think just putting yourself out there and taking classes because you only have 4 years. And I think second semester senior year, I was like looking for classes and I was like, I wish I took this. I wish I took that. And you really only have 4 years, and especially with so many classes as a pre-med that you have to take, it's fun to just try things that you wouldn't have necessarily thought about and can be a nice break from the strenuous pre-med classes. So I think that's definitely something that I'm glad I did, especially as like a biopsychology major. I had to take a lot of psychology classes and they were always my favorite. So I just think doing things that you love, especially because you have to take so many classes that you probably don't love, I think it's important to just continue doing what you're interested in and trying new things.
So for me, I would say my favorite class so far has been I actually took UNC as a requirement where you have to complete 3 semesters of a language course. So I actually took Japanese for my language course and I went up to the intermediate level. And so I took it for a year and a half. It was a lot of fun. I feel like the reason I took it also was because one of my roommate actually, freshman roommate, was like, we should take our language class together. And so we browsed through and we ended up picking Japanese, right? Because it was one of the few language classes that still had seats open. So one of the best decisions I made, I think, in my college experience. The class was very small. Professors were so nice. It was a lot. It was also really fun learning about another culture, I feel like, and also gaining experience with the language. And I feel like language classes are a bit of a. It's like it's a lot different than STEM classes. Like how you study for them, how you prepare for them. It's not the same in the sense where like I feel like you have to put in a lot more time. And I really liked sort of the like way class would function in comparison to like my other STEM classes. Like you actually get like time to work out in groups and to practice speaking, practice writing. So I feel like that was one of my favorite experiences. And then for projects, I took a class on public health entrepreneurship, and we actually created a sales pitch for a health. We created a health information company, and we created a sales pitch that we pitched to employers that came for a career fair. So that was really fun. It was a 1 credit hour class, but really fun experience. I got to meet a group of people who are all also now in my major. So it was a nice way to get to meet other people and also sort of show yourself off to different companies that are hiring or looking for people for internships.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's move along and talk maybe back to medicine. How has your perspective on medicine evolved since starting your coursework? And Priya, maybe you could start us off with that.
Yeah, I guess I've really learned to take my previous experiences and kind of figure out what niche interests in medicine really call to me. And, I think that's really important going into med school to kind of understand your purpose for going into medicine. And so for me, that looks like advocacy and work in rural or small communities. And so I think that that's something that I've really come into in my time at Rice and in my time in Houston because the Texas Medical Center is, I think, the largest in the world. So, there's so many opportunities here, but I've really made a point to immerse myself in opportunities with underprivileged communities to see if that was something that really did speak to me the way that I thought it might. Um, and so, volunteering at a public hospital, even though I research at a private one, and kind of getting those different comparisons, volunteering at a crisis text line, and just learning how I want to not only pursue the career of medicine, but why I want to pursue a career in medicine, has kind of been how my perspective has changed because I've really found a lot of purpose in the work that I do, and realized that it does fulfill me. But I do want to say that, for a lot of people, their perspective on medicine, and their why does change, in college for maybe a different way. And if you get to university and you realize that medicine isn't your calling, I don't think it's worth it to put yourself through what you need to get to where you want to be, in medicine if it's not something that you think you're going to love. And so I think that's something important to remember that if your perspective takes a change and you realize it's not something that speaks to you, that's okay. And there's plenty of other career opportunities, both inside and outside of healthcare, and so many resources in college to help you find kind of your specialized interest. And so, yeah, I think that whether your perspective changes for the better, or for the worse, there's good to be found in either opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Personally, my perspective, so when I first like came to just like college, like I thought like pre-med was being like very like science, like there's like biology, chemistry, like etc. But I think like the more like classes you take, you start to learn that it's a lot more human centered. Like it's not just science. It's like there's so much of like people around you, and it's more about like I feel like medicine in general is more about like helping the people you serve, right? They're not like you have to understand that there are like people that you need to help. Like, if you want to be in medicine for like stuff that's like money or like like the fame or whatever, like it's not the best idea to do medicine. Like medicine is something that you should do if you're really passionate about helping other people. And I think one of the classes I took last semester was like genetics. And when we covered like ethics and stuff in genetics, and you saw some of the previous experiments that are done on people, like you start to realize that like science is something that can like really change people's lives. And that's why medicine is so important because it's like a tool that you can use medicine to help improve other people's lives.
Yeah, one of the things that I always ask students when they say that they want to go into medicine, I say, great, why? And almost unanimously they say, because I want to help people. And I say, great, so how are you helping people now? And I feel like a lot of students are like deer in headlights, where they think, well, no, no, like when I'm a doctor, I'll help people. And it's, if you're looking for a career in medicine, you can't just be aspirational about helping people. You have to be helping people. If colleges are going to see that through line between who you are and who you will be, as opposed to, like you were saying, Adi, about people thinking about, well, it's a lucrative career or it's a prestigious career. It's, you know, you have to have that track record.
Yeah, I would say that personally, I feel like my perspective has definitely changed. I definitely have a wider out view on the field as a whole. I feel like since taking like classes, there's so many things that when you look back and realize that like in terms of helping people, right? I've started to realize that like in the medical field, especially, field is always evolving and changing, which I didn't really think about it that way in a sense when I first finished high school, I applied to college. I wasn't really thinking about it like that. But we're in a field that's literally changing as we're applying to it. And I feel like one of the biggest things about medicine is that um, there's always new things, new developments, new diseases. And so I feel like my perspective has changed a lot because I've realized now that it's never too early to start learning or looking into things or figuring out how the system works. And there's layers to the healthcare system as a whole. And I feel like to effectively help people in the system, you also have to understand how the healthcare system works, not just understand the science, not just understand the medicine, not just understand your role as a provider of care. We also have to understand the healthcare system. And I feel like that's such a big factor. So I would say that's probably
It's an excellent perspective, and I think maybe a question that's not on the list, but one that may be worth delving into, maybe after we get through one or two more questions, is just how do you see the field of medicine changing and incorporating AI? What are you learning about so far? Why don't we just if anybody has thoughts on that, I know it's not on the list of things we had kind of laid out, but if anybody has experiences with that and you feel good, you feel a little trepidatious, you feel encouraged. What is happening with the field? How do you think it'll impact your medical studies and your career? And what should incoming students be thinking about? Floor is open. Hit me.
one thing that I would say is so we just kind of covered this in one of my classes. It was really interesting, but we were talking about cascades of care, which I feel like is a really important thing in the healthcare field that a lot of people don't talk about. But essentially, a cascade of care is when doctors will perform a test, right? And let's say it's like they're performing an X-ray and they find like a benign mass, right, in the X-ray. Because of that because of that mass, now they're going to do another X-ray, another procedure to determine what it is, right? And after the end of that procedure, they find something else. And basically, cascaded care is essentially one procedure snowballs into a ton of other procedures, right? And so the reason behind it, why it's impactful, is because 99% of doctors say they experience cascades of care. And the whole point about cascades of care is that it's unnecessary like procedures that are being done. And so it's kind of crazy at least when I was thinking about that. And then we looked at the statistic. It's like the US spends, I think, 75 to $100 billion in unnecessary medical procedures each year. And so it's crazy to think about that like number in a sense. And then not only that, but I think it was like 41% of doctors know that the test they're ordering is unnecessary, yet they still order them anyway. And going into public health, the reasoning behind this is there's multiple reasons, but there's a lot. It's a multifaceted problem, I feel like, which is something that you have to realize that going into the medical field, these are the types of situations that you have to deal with because that's not a problem that you can solve with a simple solution. Because ordering these tests are necessary. That's the thing. Doctors want to be careful, but there's also a thing as calling for an unnecessary test. Some of these tests can harm the patients. It can push surgeries back. It can be financially draining. So there's so many factors that you have to also consider going into medicine. And the field is changing a lot more because in the past, they wouldn't consider that. They wouldn't have looked at statistics like that in the bubble of public health and been able to realize we're wasting this many resources. We're using this much money on this. These are common problems that doctors face. And I feel like that sort of like statistic, that sort of research, the epidemiological aspect of it is something that's developing a lot more in the common day.
Thank you. And does anybody else have any experiences, maybe of the AI variety that you've been learning about or that you're preparing for, and how they may be tools in the future of medicine?
Yeah, so I'm actually working as a medical scribe right now, and I've had patients say to me like, "Oh, how do you feel about AI like coming for your job?" And I'm like, "What?" But I think they've tried it. The doctors have said that they've tried um AI scribing before, and it hasn't been the same. They've seen, I mean, there's still ways to go, but right now, as of right now, it hasn't been up to par. They all say like with a human scribe in the room with them, and I think they were saying like the AI doesn't pick up on a lot of like the social aspects of the visit and stuff like that. So I'm sure. I mean, we've seen there's a lot of progress to be made with AI, and it will probably happen very rapidly. But I think for right now, we're not definitely not there yet for like a complete like AI integration yet. And I know I've seen like AI like robots and stuff being able to do like certain procedures and stuff like that. But I think obviously it's a huge change and it's something to think about for the future. But I mean, I don't plan to be a scribe forever, obviously, but some people do, and it's something to worry about, like jobs and stuff like that. But I guess I don't know. It's exciting to think about for the future, and I guess we'll see where things go with that. But yeah, it's definitely something that I've thought about before, but I haven't really seen much in person besides at this scribing job.
Thank you. And Priya, you had a thought on that too?
I was just gonna say that I think going into healthcare as a whole, you shouldn't go into the field if you don't love learning, because no matter what position you go into, you're going to have to constantly be adapting, constantly be learning, constantly be changing the way you do things. And so if you're someone that really loves education, really loves to learn, and really loves to grow and also to teach and to mentor, then this is also really good things to consider when you're going into a healthcare field, because and something as important and vital as medicine, there are going to constantly be advancements, and you have to advance with those changes, or risk, being left behind. So I think, being able to adapt quickly and move forward with the times, and not get too caught up in the nitty-gritty of things, and rather just, kind of go with the flow and embrace each new learning experience far after your time in medical school is really important to go into this field.
Thank you. And to shift back, let's do maybe one or two more. Parents, students, if you have questions, please start throwing them in the chat because I want to get to your Q&As. I want to take your questions. Let me just maybe ask one or two more of our panelists before I turn it over to the Q&A. What advice would you guys give to students who are considering the pre-med study track? Or what do you wish you knew before starting? I feel we've talked about this a little bit already, but if you can kind of put a point on it.
I'd say one thing that I wish I knew before starting was how important your relationships are with your professors and advisors. I think that's something I really overlooked my freshman year. For my freshman year, I was just like, oh, I just need to kind of focus on my academics, uh, extracurriculars here and there. And I didn't really make the effort to go to office hours and get to really know my professors, um, on a deeper, more personal level. And that's something that I'm kind of trying to like make up for right now. And the reason that's so important is because, first of all, with your professors, they're the ones writing your letters of recommendation. Letters of rec aren't just important for college, like they're also super important when applying for medical school. And with your advisors, they're the ones who, help you along the way. Getting close to them, they can give you tips on classes, which classes to take, things like that. So I think definitely don't overlook your relationship with faculty on campus.
Um, I would say that for me, I think a big piece of advice would be make the most of like your like have a timeline for stuff like your clinical hours, honestly. I wasn't really thinking about my clinical hours. I didn't start thinking about that till sophomore year. And then I went and got my CNA license, and I was doing that while I was taking courses, and it was a lot of work. So I would say if you have time over summer, or you have like plan out when you want to be able to do those, because you are probably gonna, if you want to do CNA or EMT, that's what you're considering. I would say do that early on when you're in college, because it's not the easiest thing to do while you're taking classes, you're in clubs, and any other commitments you might have.
Yeah, I think something that I would advise students is probably have like a strong foundation of like sciences and like general STEM courses. Like when you come to school, like you obviously like it's obviously the classes are obviously difficult, but you want to make sure you have a strong foundation so you struggle like as less as possible. Also like Faber mentioned, like having like a certification before you come or getting certified as early as possible is it's a good idea because you can get clinical hours and you can get paid for them, which is obviously something that like is like going to help you as a college student. Um, and yeah, I think like being able to advocate for yourself, especially like in a field where there's just so many people and I feel like there's always someone superior to you. Just being able to kind of stand up for yourself and like have your own perspective on things is very important.
Thank you. So if I could ask you guys, all of you are either at this point working on med school applications or that's coming soon. Um, what are your med school goals? And how are med apps maybe different from undergraduate applications? I know we talked about that with primary and secondary a little bit, but also how is your college preparing you for those steps beyond just your letters of rec? Like, what are they doing to shepherd you through this process?
Yeah, so for me, I would say my main medical school goal, obviously, like you want to get in and do well and like pass your tests and all that. I think like my biggest goal, aside from doing well academically, would be to just kind of like not lose myself. Like obviously, we're going to be very stressed and have not a lot of time on our hands, and I just feel like being able to make time for yourself as like we're trying to do in undergrad is still going to be extremely important, like then more than ever, and just being able to time manage properly and continue your outside relationships, because I just feel like that's what's going to give you that motivation to keep going when you really don't want to throughout the hardest parts of medical school and after that. And I feel like if you lose that part of yourself, everything else starts to decline after that. So I think that's something that's really important to me. And in terms of the medical school applications, I actually only applied to Tufts because I was going for basketball, so I just applied ED to Tufts. So I didn't honestly have the strongest idea of what like a lot of applications look like. So I was kind of taken by surprise when I applied to a lot of medical schools. So it was very different for me, and it wasn't a shock, but it was a lot of work because I didn't have that experience in high school. Um, so I just think that like obviously like as Priya said, the primary is like the common app and then the secondary is all the school specific questions, and you want to get that in quickly. So I just feel like that time crunch, and it's a whole year long cycle process. Like now that I finish, it's just another waiting game until who knows if you even get an interview or stuff like that. So it's just like a lot of waiting, and that can bring on a lot of anxiety about like what the future holds for you. But I just feel like staying on track of everything and keeping your dates in order, and when you need to get stuff in by, what school needs this, what school needs that. Do you have to send in other types of testing? Like obviously you have to take the MCAT, but some schools require like a Casper test and a AAMC preview test, which are just like professional readiness tests. And that was something I didn't really know of until I was going through it, because I didn't really like have anyone to model after. But so stuff like that, I think just staying aware, and that kind of just goes into how is your college preparing you for those steps. They were the ones, they send out like the Tufts pre-health advising team. They send out reminders, weekly webinars, sessions for everybody to watch and stay focused on. They have meetings that you can set up with them at literally any time that you want to. And I just think that they really kept me on track, and they were like, take the preview by this date, take the Casper by this date. Here are the schools that require it. Here are the schools that like heavily recommend it, or you don't need to send it, and stuff like that. So I just think that staying involved with your pre-health advising team is very important, because they've gone through several cycles before and they obviously know what they're doing. And so I just feel like staying on top of your dates and everything that needs to happen and asking them questions has been the most important part for me so far.
Thank you. Very thorough.
Yeah, I would totally agree with all of that. I think for me, I mean, going into medical school, I have a different approach than going into undergrad. I'm still casting like a wide net, just like I did in undergrad. I applied to, a lot of undergraduate schools. I applied to a lot more medical schools. But I think in all, I'm just trying to get in somewhere. And kind of trusting the process that, the places that I do get in, I'll be able to make a well-informed decision, somewhere that I think will best serve me, as a medical student based on the values that those different schools have, the location and et cetera and so forth. And so I think that was different from undergrad because, I had a set dream school. And then when I didn't get into that dream school, that really crushed me. Or when my other, schools that I really wanted to go to were unaffordable, that really, really crushed me as well. So I think in this process, I'm trying to just, trust myself, trust that I'll end up somewhere great and not have too many expectations, rather than to just put my best foot forward. Medical school apps are definitely more stressful than undergraduate apps, especially trying to get secondaries in quickly, has been really exhausting with different waves of applications coming out at different times. Like Caitlin said, she's done with her secondaries. I just received my next round of secondaries about 4 days ago. So it's really just, kind of all different stages are happening at all different times. And it's kind of about not comparing yourself, like we've mentioned before. But I definitely think Rice did a good job at preparing me. There are seminars starting in September for the following cycle, which you want to apply for. Rice writes a committee letter like Tufts does. And then I think something that hasn't been mentioned as much that I think is really important is to get a mentor who is a student. Um, so I think, when you're a freshman, finding someone who's 1 or 2 years older than you that's willing to, work with you through the process, talk to you about, even just, your general chemistry class, and then talk to you about their MCAT process, and someone you can kind of see their steps and model after a little bit so you don't feel so blindsided, I think is really important as well. Making those upperclassmen connections because, I think a lot of these schools are similar to Rice and where community is really important. And so taking advantage of those communities, taking advantage of those students who have come before you, is a way that you can make sure your college prepares you besides from the professional tracks that they offer.
So I'm not currently working on my med school apps, but I am in the process of studying for my MCAT. I would say that comparing that to like standardized testing for like the ACT, SAT, I would say the MCAT varies a lot in a sense where you have to start a lot earlier. It's not like the same as the ACT, SAT, where you can just content review and you'll be fine. The way you have to understand how the questions are written, you have to do a lot of practice problems, content review. There's phases to your study system. So I'd say like definitely it's a lot different. My school has helped me prepare in the sense that they do practice full length exams through different clubs and also through clubs and also through academics. So you can also go and take a full length exam on like a Saturday if you want, and they'll proctor you through the exam if you go to them. So I think that's one thing that's really helpful. Um, I would say joining clubs. I'm in a club that's like for pre-health students, and that's kind of how I have my my pre-med mentor. It's another student who he's just got into UNC Med. He's a first year now, and so that's who I got paired from freshman year. He's a first year now, so I think it's very beneficial to go and meet those student mentors, find someone who's already been through it so you can also talk to them, get advice as you're going through the process yourself. And I think also take everything at its own pace, for example. Like I think for the MCAT, a lot of students will try and rush it. And I would say rather than rush it, do good on your first attempt. So you only have to take it once kind of. Um, but again, also go for the score you want. I think taking it multiple times is fine, but it's good to just try and prepare your first time. And if you're not feeling ready, you can always reschedule the exam. I know some people who do that. That's some advice that I've already gotten. It's what my advisor told me to do. If I'm not feeling ready for my date, reschedule the exam. So I would say it's all about planning and prep a lot, even more so than college apps, because you have to start planning and prepping for these things a lot earlier.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much for those perspectives. We have a question here from the chat, and for those of you who are here tuned in, by all means, throw some questions in the chat. You can hit the chat and click the little pencil button to start a new chat with the Q&A, and send it over to our Q&A moderator. But this one, and this open to anybody who wants to answer it, does it feel really competitive being pre-med at a school with such a high concentration of other pre-med students? And so certainly some of your schools are very well known for pre-med. Some of your schools are much larger, and pre-med is a portion of it. But do you feel like among your classmates, it is competitive?
I can go ahead and start. I think that I'm an anxious and stressed out person, in general. And so something that was really important for me was collaboration and community. And I have not felt any sense of competition at Rice whatsoever. Obviously that can be different for different people, but the overwhelming majority of students here, I would say, are more than happy to help you, more than happy to uplift you. Jobs that I've gotten, opportunities that I've gotten have been from other students inviting me to their lab. I have gotten other students into my own lab. I volunteer at the same places with some of my friends because, we'll help each other get in with those volunteer positions. Students have sent me their applications for different internships over the summer so that I can read what worked for them and how they got in. We share our notes with each other. I think that the community here has really been the thing that has set this experience apart for me from anything else I've ever been in. And for me, I have not really experienced any aspect of competition within the pre-med community or within the Rice community at large. I think they do a really good job of fostering what we call at Rice the culture of care. And it's something that you hear from your first day on campus. And it's something that, your orientation advisors and all the upperclassmen really try to embody because it's really important at the core of who we are as a university. And so caring for one another, looking out for one another, helping each other through difficult classes is how we kind of embody that. And for me personally, I would say if you want a pre-med experience that feels very uplifting and encouraging, Rice would definitely be a great school to look at.
Anybody else have thoughts on collaboration versus competition, and maybe think of the question also in terms of you guys are very used to and when you were in high school, you were probably toward the pack, toward the top of the pack. I know Priya, you mentioned you were valedictorian of your high school, but what has it been like going from being one of the top students at a school with a big mix of students to being in a prestigious university in a prestigious program that was at least competitive to get into? What has that change been like for anybody?
Um, I don't mind speaking on that. I feel like UNC was going to UNC with the competitiveness. I was a little bit like terrified because I had heard stories from like my cousin who goes here, and he was like, "Oh, people, when you have exams for like Chem 101, people will take all the tables in the library. You can't sit anywhere. You can't study anywhere. People will go and they'll take books. Like you can't. There's no books. You can't get textbooks." So I was like terrified going in, and only to find it's literally not like that at all. I think that I think my first STEM class was intimidating here because I didn't know people, right? But UNC, I feel like, has that sort of like, I think it's like built, it's almost built into most of the departments, like chemistry especially, but the professors will literally build time into the class so you can get to know the people who are sitting around you. And then as the semester goes on, you end up talking to those people and sort of forming a group. So the atmosphere is very welcoming, I feel like. And I do think it was a big shift going from being like very, because I did very well in high school, then I'm going to UNC, and it's like everyone's doing really well. Everyone here is smart. Everyone here is exceptional. So it's definitely a big shift, I feel like. Um, but I think that one thing that I learned to do was to focus on myself more so than on other people's progress, because everyone has their own journey. Some people will be good at some things, some people will be bad at some things. And so I feel like for me, one of the ways that I almost coped with that was realizing that if I, just because I'm not, I don't know, just because someone else might get something easier than I do, I can still work hard. I can still achieve my goals. I just have to put in that extra effort. And so that's kind of my mindset going towards it, coming from going from being top student to just one student in the crowd. But I do feel like it can be a little alienating at times, which is why I would say go find your friends, find your study group, find those people who are also going through that you can surround yourself with, because you definitely need people. It is hard. It's so hard to succeed on your own, and especially in college, especially with these classes. And the professors know that. That's why they try and get you to communicate, collaborate. They'll build in teamwork assignments. So I feel like it's definitely a new experience.
Well, guys, with no other questions from the chat, I want to thank all of our students today, our TouredIt guides, for sharing their perspectives. I want to thank our Q&A moderator for doing a great job. I want to thank everybody who's attended. I want to thank Josh for putting this together. Just a quick goodbye from me, and I'll turn it back to Josh. Here at Solution Prep, we help students with college admissions, essays, applications, choosing colleges, things like that, as well as SAT and ACT prep. We are here if you need us. And I'd like to turn it back over to Josh, and we'll also throw the link for next month's event that Josh will tell you about in the chat, so you guys can click on that if it's something you're interested in.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for jumping on. I think this was great. I think that hearing from students' perspectives directly can be very beneficial. And so next month, we're doing the same thing from the business side of things. So we're going to be looking at Michigan, Indiana, NYU, UC Berkeley, and UPenn. So if you guys are interested in those schools, specifically the business schools within those universities, then we welcome you back with open arms. And then if you had any future questions for any of these people, again, TouredIt, we offer these personalized college tours. We offer virtual chats. So if you guys have any questions or you're more interested in learning more about their experiences, please don't hesitate to reach out. But with that being said, thank you guys, and have a great rest of your Monday night.